How would you know if your taxpayers' dollars were going to support a communist regime in Cambodia that was carrying out mass murder? You just assume there are journalists who would tell you. How would you know? How would you know if Evercade was doing a terrible job emulating the Game Boy Advance? You assume that there are journalists like Crazy Burger, like PK in the Universe, who are doing the hard work for you. That they tell you. Shout out to the YouTuber who's named in the bottom left corner of the screen here. You can see him contrasting this game, part of the Duke Nukem series, contrasting how it runs on original hardware in the Game Boy Advance and how it runs on the Evercade. Something ain't right here. Look at them side by side. If you grew up with that generation of games, you can tell that something is wrong. And it's the role of journalists, it's the role of my fellow YouTubers to do the hard work, engage in criticism, and point it out for you. Shout out to Zombos2222, a commenter who drew my attention to this. 40 Winks is a not particularly famous game that, was one of 1,000 attempts to reproduce the success of Mario 64 in some part. But unlike Mario 64, it had two-player simultaneous co-op action. And that was dropped from, that disappeared from the Evercade version of the game. Something I should have heard about from, some other YouTube channel reviewing the cartridge. And again, we have to question, what is the function of games journalism? What is the function of citizen journalism? Remember that term? Went out of style. Okay, the next one on the list here, I've made a separate video covering, but very briefly, R-Type has shimmering. Shimmering, screen tearing, these are visual defects in video game emulation that, if you are paying for a professionally made product, professionally made hardware, software, firmware, there is no excuse. It should not exist, but it's something that many gamers are used to coping with when they use illegal and amateur software. They learn how to mess with the settings and, install this, set that. Well, guess what? If you have an Evercade, you can't adjust settings, you can't do anything. Running R-Type, pixel perfect, on a big screen TV, the Evercade VS HDMI out, you are looking at a screen full of shimmering. It is the role of the journalist, it is the responsibility of the YouTuber to point out both to the consumer and to the manufacturer, this isn't good enough. No pun intended. Step up your game. Oh, let me just mention, the reason why I was banned from commenting on PK in the Universe's channel, and I see from his own comments that he remembers this, he remembers it all too well, is because I dared to point out that the Hyper Megatech Pocket here has a resolution of only 320 by 480 pixels. PK in the Universe was one of the guys who hyped this thing up. I dared to point out to him there just are not enough pixels on that screen to handle TAD mode. Prove me wrong, bro. Or, hey, admit that I'm right. I still criticize and ridicule Noam Chomsky on the internet to this day. Oh, hashtag foreshadowing. Did you guys know I was going to go there? Because Noam Chomsky supported Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. But after the fact, when he got caught, when he got exposed, when this became a controversy that was covered both in books and academic essays, I think at least one documentary movie also dealt with this. You know what? Chomsky couldn't just take responsibility and admit he was wrong. We all make mistakes, Noam Chomsky more than most of us. It's a terrible mistake, but just admit you were wrong. My name in the papers at NPR. I can't be a nobody, no, gotta be a star. Cambodia what? I don't know shit. If Vietnam don't sell, I'm getting into it. Epstein had money and connections and hoes. Me, I was thinking I could use 2 or 3 of those. You see my grind ain't politically correct. I supported Pol Pot up the side of my neck. Just admit you were wrong. Don't ban me, don't punish me, don't start a hate campaign against me in your crappy YouTube video in which you're patting yourself on the back for being tough enough to deal with the slings and arrows of completely reasonable criticism. Hey bro, it's just a technical error. 320 by 240, can't handle Tate mode, not enough vertical pixels, we are done. And last but not least, let me just mention, it is a travesty to be selling a device with built-in games that should be two-player, that in many cases are enjoyable as a two-player co-op experience only, like Bubble Bobble, like the most vegan video game of all time, Growl, aka Runark. And I notice people seem to prefer to pronounce it Runark, probably for really good reasons. Topic for another video. But whether we're talking about Bubble Bobble or Growl, it's just unforgivable to pass over the lack of a link cable, the lack of any capacity for two-player co-op play, as if it is a minor defect.
Feels a little warm. Might just be the battery working overtime here. It's not like hot, but it's warm.
This company is producing a console, actually two different pocket consoles, with Street Fighter 2 as a built-in game, but only 4 face buttons, plus nearly inoperable shoulder buttons, and we're all going to pretend that that isn't broken by design. We're all going to pretend that one-player-only Street Fighter with 4 face buttons is a product worth purchasing. No. As a YouTuber, you have to let the consumer know, you have to let the audience know, and you have to send a signal back to the company. This isn't good enough. This is broken by design. You can do better. And when you do, we will be among the first to applaud.